Good.
So you were attending today, and do I understand right? You were here yesterday also.
I was here at the end of the
Tiny
day,
bit, yeah.
just the last talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you like it? How did you like the event?
Oh, I enjoyed it. It's a nice event. It's informal, but it's informing. You have a lot of interesting people, a lot of good discussion, and it's got a good buzz to it. So it's been fun. A lot of ideas in the air. I mean, certainly it's a great time of change for structures and buildings and how people interact with them. And Scandinavia and Finland have a really great legacy, both in terms of smart technologies, but also in architecture. So it's natural that we come together here.
And why are events like this important?
I think, I mean, there's so many different kinds of events. We tend to go more to academic events. At least that's where we give the in-depth talks. So those are important, but that's a small community that's really looking at research and kind of a new cutting edge it's usually before product, well before product. But you're getting to the point now with Internet of Things and buildings where industry has to be engaged. And events like this are a fora where companies of all sorts can come, talk about their philosophies, talk with researchers who are pushing further, get the ideas in the air, and hopefully establish some sort of common ground to make the new standards, make the new protocols and new products that are going to push life forward. So yeah, I think it's a good time for an event like this.
And now the big question, how do you see the market and the field evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Right. See, I don't work so much with markets, and that we try to look beyond the market to think of what's possible, what we could do. But that said, we're at the point now where Internet of Things is a recognized gold rush. When we started doing this work, so that's back at the Media Lab, early 90s, mid 90s, even before if you look at some of the projects that were happening. And then you have ubiquitous computing in Xerox PARC that really started this, and that was really the late 80s. So we had these ideas, we started building out infrastructure, playing with it, but we have to do everything in a special case at that point, right? We had no universal wireless network. We'd have to make our own network for a set of examples we were doing, for a set of demos. There were no wearable sensors you could buy and use. We have to make them ourselves, including the wireless protocol for all of that. So for all the work we did before, we really would have to build the whole system from the bottom up. But now the infrastructure is almost there. I think in many ways it is there. If you look at networking, you have certainly Wi-Fi that's ubiquitous. You start getting BLE certainly around the body, if not around some buildings. Lighting is networked. HVAC is all digital, right? The control panel is no longer a set of switches and knobs. It's a digital abstraction. So you can control it any number of ways. So I think at this point we're living in a world where the infrastructure is starting to be saturated. It exists. You have people carrying ubiquitous computers, which are our phones now. They become personal servers, as we predicted years ago, already in ubiquitous computing. And you look at buildings, you can start controlling lots of aspects of them because the systems are not necessarily open yet, but they at least have the digital lines that are going deep into their operation to control them. So this is the time where it all has to come together, where Internet of Things becomes a reality, and where there's tremendous businesses and profit that can be made at that intersection, and benefit, I think, for humanity and mankind. So we'll have more efficient buildings, we'll have maybe easier lives. That's hard to say, right? Life will change. There's more that we'll be able to do. I think the human will be leveraged in many ways. We have also the beginning of AI at this point, right? Where you have smarter algorithms, you have deep learning, you have more understanding of complex phenomena that are represented by human behavior and sensors, and that can come back to enrich people's lives in different ways. So I think the pieces of the puzzle are so much closer to fitting now. And we built a lot of this years ago. We tried little bits of it out, but we couldn't scale it because we didn't have the infrastructure. The technology wasn't at the point where we could really roll it out. Now it's all here and all relatively easy to access for the most part. It will get easier. So it's a very good time for that.
So if everything is in pieces and we have all of these technology and startups and everything. So do you have any tips? How can we assure that all of these new things work with each other?
Oh, that's critical. I think you have to have open systems, open architectures. You have to have protocols that are adopted by enough players so that they're not going to keep everything within their family. Every company has to realize, and it was said in the last set of talks actually by the companies and by me, that your data is not going to be owned by any entity or individual. You have to have these systems interoperate because that's where all of the benefit is going to come. So we need the protocols to do that. We're on the verge of having them, I think, now. So I think, you want to be open. You want to be able to build on all this information, all this data. You also have to look at privacy and security too. Where is the door going to be closed? How do you do that? How do you secure your building and your city from extreme hacking from the outside? There's always going to be a vulnerability. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm aware that has to go hand in hand with building out the openness. Because as we become more open, we leave ourselves open to disaster too. So we have to look at both ends.
And lastly, I would like to know, since you know so much about the future and everything that is going
Well,
on,
nobody knows about the future, although we convince ourselves sometimes that we do.
I think if someone knows, you know.
Well,
So I would like to know, what are you excited about at the moment?
oh, so many things to be excited about. I think really the transformation of the human is intriguing, right? I mean, if we look at how things have changed around us with technology, and I've heard this said before, and I think it's really more poignant now. You look at my grandfather's generation. He was fought in World War I. He was in Italy, fought on the Allied side in World War I, and then he died in the 70s. He lived a long life. So he came over from Italy as a child, southern Italy, to the U.S. Established himself as a construction worker and did very well. Became a foreman, raised a family, and then I come along a generation later. But look at what he saw. He saw us go from, when he's in Italy, horse and buggy was the main mode of transportation. It's probably rare to see a car, even in the U.S. In late 1800s he was born, early 1900s, and then he saw men landing on the moon. So in his lifetime went from horse and buggy to moon landings. That's an incredible change. Look at my generation. Okay, we saw TV go to computers, and now I have a computer in my pocket, and I can, I don't get lost anymore because of GPS, and it's all this stuff. It's nice. I love music, right? I don't have to have my records physically anymore. I have it all virtually. So there have been a lot of convenient changes. But what's happening now, if you look at my kids' generation, and potentially yours too, you're going to see enormous change again, right? And I think it's changed in the nature of the human. Now, human nature is, people say, it's always the same and it gets us into trouble. That's a pessimistic way of looking at it. I think, the whole nature of who you are, where the individual stops and the cloud begins, that's all going to be dynamic, right? Because as my talk discussed, the world is not going to be seen so much as other. It's going to be an extension of self. At least the smart buildings, smart infrastructure, and then even people, right? Our opinions are all going to start to flow together in different ways. We're seeing it in social media. It's created a tremendous problem because people get tunneled into narrow viewpoints and have their own version of reality. But in a way, it could be tremendously good too if they're sharing the best parts of each other. We have some large dialogue that can encourage new ideas. So I think there's a tremendous amount of possibility and really seeing how the human transforms, really by sharing our neurons to some extent with the cloud, right? But again, you look at the changes. It's just in information technology, which is more where I work. But you look at biology, you even look at pure science. Some basic big questions that we've been asking for 100 years, 200 years are going to be answered. I mean, the big one is life unique to Earth? Huge question, and we're going to know. In 10 to 20 years, we're going to know. Because if it exists, we're going to find it either elsewhere in the solar system or in other planets in the atmospheres. So, that's a huge one. Because if there is life somewhere else, I would guess that intelligence probably is not uncommon because it has survival advantage. and you'll follow evolution. No one knows for sure, but you tend to think it would be that trend. Why don't you see other, intelligent life all over? We don't see it. See no evidence of it at all. And it's either because this train that we're on is going to crash, and intelligence like ours doesn't last very long because we destroy ourselves. That's pessimistic. It could be because we changed into something else. And at that point, we don't care about space travel or all that because we figured out something else that is bigger. We just can't anticipate what it is. Hopefully it's not going to a virtual world and playing a video game forever. But we're on the cusp of something different, something big, something that could change the nature of the human. I mean, but there are perils, great perils too. So this generation is going to see that play out. And I think that's extremely exciting.
We could talk about this for the next 5 hours, but at the moment, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Super interesting.